thank you for the invitation, and we're very glad to share some of our insights and some of our learnings from the last couple of years working in an open science working group from the Vienna. So my name is Ben. I'm working at the Ludwig Boltzmann Society. We're trying. Basically, what I'm working on is trying to make research more open in different steps, and open science is one of the main movements that have been popped up the last couple of years, and so we're really glad to share some of our things that we're working on. So we divided our talk. We have 30 minutes. So we would like to talk about our working group first, and then give you some examples, an overview about one project in particular, the Spoman project from Denmark, and then some other projects from a platform called Zooniverse, a citizen science platform. And in the middle, we have some interactive involvement, so get ready to take your phones out. And so, Daniel, you will start, right?
So thank you very much. Yes, as Ben already explained, we have founded the working group Open Science Trainings just 2 years ago because we made the experience that many researchers want to open up their research processes, want to collaborate with others, but most of them really don't know how they should do that or where they should start. This is also the reason why we called our presentation an incomplete overview, because there are several hundred of open science tools available, and therefore we cannot give you a complete overview. But just as we see here on the picture, even something incomplete can be very beautiful. And yeah, we hope that we can spark some interest in open science tools in you today. So as I said, we founded this Open Science Trainings working group in 2018. This is a collaborative working group between the Citizen Science Network Austria, the Ludwig Boltzmann Society, and the Open Science Network Austria. And the aim is to give discipline-specific trainings for individual open science tools, just to give researchers kind of a head start on how to use different tools in their research. So we organize workshops and hands-on guidelines. We try to exchange the knowledge inside the working groups to identify new tools, to also identify new trainers, to exchange existing know-how. And when we organize these workshops, we always try to have the trainer approach in the back of our minds, because through this we really hope that we can further spread the knowledge on specific open science tools. So far we organized 2 workshops on GitHub. This workshop was called GitHub for Newbies. And 1 workshop on open knowledge maps, yeah, you will learn a lot more about open knowledge maps just right after us. This year in summer we were able to transfer our working group, which was very voluntary, so we didn't have any funding or much funding from institutions to organize everything. So we were really able to transfer this into the Wissenstransferzentrum Ost, or in short WTZ. So the WTZ is an infrastructural program which enables the collaboration of institutions for higher education in Vienna, Lower Austria, and in Burgenland. And again, we have inside the work package Innovation Matters, we have these trainings, these open science trainings, which we organize, which are topic specific this time, on the topics education, health and care, learning, and also climate, and also housing. Again, we try to understand and to learn tools and methods to open up research processes, and we want to enable participation in innovative knowledge exchange formats. For this, we organize 4 training events on the topics education, health and care, climate, and housing, and 1 workshop on an overarching topic, and this topic is not set yet, so this will be done over the next 2 years or so. If you are interested in these workshops, you can participate in these workshops, of course. And also, if you cannot participate due to any reason, we will openly disseminate the results of these workshops and trainings for everyone. So you can still have the results then. As I mentioned before, we saw the need for open science trainings because many researchers said, okay, yeah, I really want to do open science, but I don't really know where to start. And if you just look at this very simplified research workflow with the discovery at the beginning and an assessment in the end, there are, for each step of this research process, there are specific tools and several specific tools available. If you look at it in a more traditional way, so for example, in the analysis phase, you used SPSS, for example, to analyze your data. Then if you write your publication, you used Microsoft's Word, and then maybe EndNote, which is also from Microsoft, and so on and so on. So all these tools are really closed systems, and if you now move to a more modern approach, so what many researchers are nowadays using, then it might look like this. So for discovery, you might also use Google Scholar. Then for the analysis, you might also use the open source software R, and so on. And here, these tools are a little bit more open. So R, as I said, is open source. You can share your packages. You can program packages for yourself. You can share them with other researchers. But still, it's not very open. So if you want to use a more innovative approach, then you might also use Mendeley, or you use Zooniverse, which we will learn about in just a couple of minutes, to analyze your data, where you collaborate with thousands of people, maybe. And if you're more adventurous, you can also use these experimental tools. Most of them I really don't know. But yeah, they're more experimental. And what is also very interesting, there are also companies who very quietly, more or less quietly, have developed tools for every step of the research process. For example, Google. Google has nowadays tools for almost every step of the research process. So you don't have to leave the Google ecosystem if you don't want to. The same is for NPG or Macmillan. So you see, there are a lot of different tools, and so where do you start? And even if you say, okay, I'm very adventurous, I'm doing this right now, eventually you come to a point in your research process where you might, or where you have to switch the tools between the research phases, for example. And then you might ask yourself, are these do these tools really work well together? Or are they incompatible with each other? And as you probably have guessed, yes, they are not all of them are working well with each other. Some of them are really incompatible. So if you use the one tool, then you cannot use the other tool. So this further complicates things. And also, as I said before, we have a very simplified research workflow, and we have it here again. Here what we can see is a research process is not sequential. I mean, you have the preparation, discovery, analysis, and so on. And in theory, you just prepare everything, then you make your research discovery, you make your analysis, and so on. But even between discovery, analysis, and writing, you can go a step back, you can go a step further. Then you also have, especially in publication, and when you start the publication process, this can throw you back all the way. If the reviewers don't like your research, for example, then you can start all over again, or do some more analysis, or if you're very lucky, you can also publish everything and start the assessment. And in all these steps, there are also certain loops, for example, in the discovery, you can do many iterations of search and reading. In the analysis, you do many rounds of experiments and measurements. And also in writing, you do many drafts, you are receiving comments, you are rewriting whole sections or the whole manuscript, and so on and so on. So as you can see, everything is a little bit more complicated than many people want you to believe.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. That's actually a good keyword. So speak about complexity. So when we narrow this down in those different phases, we can see, okay, look, we're in the analysis phases. What can I do? So what we want to actually do in our working group is to say there are many tools out there, but you don't need to use all of them at once. Huh? So it's a step-by-step approach. It can be, you can start with some like easy things like using open licenses for your charts or for your figures. You can start by trying to cooperate and write your articles with Overleaf or Authorea. You can start with small things depending on the research partner that you're working on, because what we also found is that depending on the ecosystem that you're embedded, people have different speed. And if you're a professor that you're working with or you're a PhD student that you're working with, they have like different approaches. So this slide is just to show you that there are many different tools out there, and we also posted a link on the end of the slide where there's a database about all those tools that you can have a look at, and you can scroll through and you can browse through. So we will not go into detail with all those tools, but just to show you. So now this is a researcher that has to handle many different things at once. And so I would like you to take out your smartphones just for a second and type in slido.com or slide.do, whatever you prefer, and then type in the hashtag just open. And I wrote down just a quick question, a ranking question basically. So you have multiple choice. So can you see yourself? So because I believe that most of you are here because you want to learn about open science, or you have been experimenting with open science. So where does openness start and end? Sometimes it's a moral, ethical discussion also. But at the end, what we see with our research at LBG, it's about what's in it for me. This is I think this is something that also we as a funder have to think about. How can we incentivize these kind of practices? So I'll put start. Okay. Yeah. Well, as Daniel already told, there are different research processes that you can insert your open practices, and we would like to give you some examples of open science practices. And one that struck me really was a project that we'll talk about real soon, is the Spoman project. And what they tried to manage is to bring in open practices in all those different workflows. What did they do? So Spoman, it's for smart polymer, material, and nanoscience at the Aarhus University in Denmark. And there's this one crazy guy who's called Kim Jasberg, and I met him 1 year ago because I went there for an Open Science Festival. And he said, okay, I just started this from scratch. I wanted to make my workflows open in my institute. So he has a lot of PhDs and affiliated professors, and he's said, I'm fed up with getting access to data or papers in a closed environment. I want to open this up. And he has a lot of collaborations with companies. So he's working with Lego, he's working with Velux, so they are building the surface and the material. He's a hardcore material scientist, so he's kind of modifying the surface of windows, for example, in order to have certain properties. So he has this industry linkage, of course. And what he said, okay, I will put all of my work online via the Open Science Framework. And they practiced this a couple of years, and then what they found is nobody's picking up their work. So it's not enough to share the data or to throw it out in the environment and then to hope that somebody is picking it up and making it like creating something new out of it. That's what one of their main findings. So what they did, they tried to bring in or to insert mechanisms where they could allow open science by default, but also allow closed projects. So it's kind of a trade-off to say, okay, my research workflows, they are open by default, but also if some companies have issues or problems that they want to solve with the research, they want to start in a closed environment in order to build trust, in order to open up, in order to have some new products, to recruit students, to have spin-outs or whatever. But this started a conversation between academia and the whole industry, and they are shifting towards having more projects open. So that's kind of one finding that is very interesting, that we believe, and also from our funder perspective as the Ludwig Boltzmann Society, we believe that it's not enough to have like really nice headlines and to say we are practicing this and this and that, but we need to build smart environments, and we need to build smart mechanisms depending on the discipline we are in. And you guys probably are from all those different disciplines, and it's not one size fits all. So that's the takeaway message, I think, from the Spoman project. And you will talk about other projects, right?
Yes, so we now heard something about a project that opened up everything. And if you're new to open science, or if you're new to opening up your research process, you might not want to start with opening up everything, because it can be quite overwhelming. But if you want to try to open up only one part of your research, for example, data collection or the analysis part, then there is a really, really cool tool that I want to present to you right now, and that's called Zooniverse. We heard about it just before. And Zooniverse is a very big platform that allows citizen scientists, so people outside academia, to collaborate on scientific projects. They can annotate texts or pictures, they can digitize texts, and they can also translate or transcribe texts. So what exactly is Zooniverse? Zooniverse is the biggest people-powered research platform, as they call themselves. It is based on the project Galaxy Zoo from the University of Oxford. University of Oxford, and more exactly the astronomy department at the University of Oxford, had a big problem. They had millions of pictures of galaxies, and they needed to classify and to categorize them. And a single researcher, for a single researcher, it would take years to categorize all these pictures. And you might think about, okay, and why do they need to classify these pictures? Because based on the shape of a galaxy, you can tell a lot about how a galaxy was formed, how old it is, and so on. So they came up with the idea, okay, then let's just upload all these pictures into the internet and ask people, hobby astronomers and also other people, if they want to help us, if they want to look at these pictures and try to categorize them. And what they did not expect was that in the first year, more than 150,000 participants made more than 50 million classifications. This was such a huge success that they said, okay, if it works in astronomy, then it might also work in other areas of research. So they built this platform, Zooniverse, and now you can find thousands of citizen science projects that collaborate with people from outside academia on this platform. And these people, digitize texts, annotate pictures, classify pictures, also work with audio files. And for this presentation, I made a quick look at the Zooniverse platform and looked for projects in the humanities, for example. And there are quite some humanities projects. And I will just present two of them very shortly to you. the Anti-Slavery Manuscripts project by the Boston Public Library. They have a huge collection of texts, of documents, of handwritten letters, as you can see here, from anti-slavery activists from the early 19th century. They now want to make these texts available for everyone to do research on. And so they scanned all these texts, uploaded them to Zooniverse, and now the participants can transcribe these handwritten letters after a short tutorial. So they are really shown how to use the tool, what is expected of them, how they can contribute, and each transcription is again controlled by other citizen scientists. So you might not want to rely on a single individual. So every text is again controlled by other citizen scientists, also by other researchers. And if they find some unclear words, then they can mark them. So again, other citizen scientists or other researchers can have a look at them. Since the beginning of the project in January 2018, more than 5,000 volunteers transcribed more than 80% of all the documents. And I just looked it up today. It's more than 2,200 documents that have been transcribed so far. So really, again, a huge success. And also the participants of this project said, wow, that's really cool, because I could not read, or I could not have, I did not have any access to these letters, and I'm really interested in this topic, and it's really, really nice to see how the people back then communicated with each other and what kind of topics they talked in these anti-slavery manuscripts. Another very similar project is the project Castaway. In this project, the participants transcribed data from handwritten logbooks from research vessels between 1964 and 2013, and they look just like that. So you have all kinds of data in these handwritten logbooks, and the people, participants transcribe them, and the very nice thing about this is not only the project PIs are doing projects with this data. No, this data is also used in taxonomy, in human health projects, in ecology, conservation, habitat management, and so on, because this old data is very, very useful if you want to do some research on the development of a certain species, of a certain marine species, or on weather trends, and so on. So this is really a very good example how open science, how opening up your research process, even only in this very small part of your research process, can really foster collaboration over discipline borders. With this example or examples, we want to thank you for your attention. And here are the links that Ben already mentioned before. So if you want to know more about open science, then you can find more information on it following these links. And I think the slides will be shared with you after the workshop. And let me just take one more chance to announce our upcoming workshop on the 25th of November. It will be the first workshop in the WTZ framework. It's about open nursing research, chances and barriers, a dialogue. And it will be in the Haus Augarten, which is a nursing home in the 2nd district of Vienna. So we will also have participants there who live in this nursing home and who work in this nursing home, and hopefully also a lot of researchers. And if you have any questions on this workshop or in general about what we presented today, then feel free to ask us. Thank you.